actually
yeah,
not hot yet, right?
right. On the
count me down? Go over there. Go there.
You're good.
Good morning and welcome, colleagues, to this first hour of our opening week PD to chart our course for today and our focus for the year. We are live streaming this morning from WHC TV or WHC Interactive, and we are so thrilled to be here with you. I'm Rosina Haskins, the Director of Equity Advancement, formerly Director of Diversity Advancement. You know, over the last 6 months, we have deeply reflected on who we are as a district and who we serve. And our present times have signaled a need for change in our organization and our focus. So I hope that by now you have had an opportunity to see Superintendent Moore's recorded welcome video to all of you. He is here with us this morning to extend a brief greeting and welcome live and in person. Superintendent Moore.
Thanks, Rosina. I really appreciate everybody that's back and ready to take on this challenge. I've had other superintendents come up to me this summer as they're looking at this work, and some have said, and it actually really makes me blanch when people say, you're so fortunate to have the resources to be able to put into this area. And I always say it's not fortune, that's a choice. It's a choice we make to prioritize what's really important to us. This work is central to everything we do in education. What we are fortunate with is the people that we have. All of you out there who since I've known you, but certainly this summer, have renewed your commitment to make things better for all of our kids and to make sure that all of our children know that they're heard. A couple people particularly we have the great fortune of having in our district are here with you today. And that's Rosina and Scott, and I'm going to turn it back over to them. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore, for greeting us this morning. And thank you for being a leader that sees possibilities when at times it's easy to see obstacles. Thank you for joining us this morning. We know you have a busy day. So I am also thrilled to be joined today and in this work and in the Office of Equity Advancement by my colleague and friend and one-time mentor, Dr. Scott Ratchford. Scott Ratchford has served roles as a school psychologist and administrator in and outside of the district around the state. He is a front runner in our equity, diversity, and inclusion work, and he is a leader, well-known leader across the state for his family and school partnership work. Welcome, Scott.
Thank you.
So tell us, what are your hopes for this school year?
So I think maybe it's the same hopes I have for most school years, that our students, our families, and our staff are excited to come back to school and to maximize what they learn and what they gain from a school experience. Maybe uniquely this year, I hope everyone is healthy and approaches this year with patience, and that we are kind to one another and supportive of one another as a community, and we pull together to make it all happen.
Great. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I am so thrilled to be working with you and partnering with you in this very, very important work. So just to begin, to frame the day and this morning, our time with you, I'd like to begin with just kind of an overview of what to expect for this morning and just some general housekeeping items. So Scott and I will share our airtime, unpacking our goals, our focus, our purpose, relevant to social emotional learning and social justice, with the goal of becoming an anti-racist organization. Now, we have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, which we've emailed out to all of you, and again, just moments ago, so you can have it, you can access that. We will project the slides on the screen as well, so that you can follow along, but if you need more time to kind of linger on the screen, you'll have that opportunity. You'll have access to that document. We are going to try to make this as interactive as we can, given this platform. It doesn't really allow for two-way interaction, which you will have during your breakout session. But during our time with you, we are going to ask you to reflect, to ponder, and to imagine. We also have, we recognize that we may not have covered everything, right? And so we have prepared a parking lot for you. And so we're asking you to use this form if questions arise, either during this session or later on during the day. We will, at the end of this session, we will take a 10-minute break and we'll transition to your breakout session. We've sent links, join links for your small group work, and we have incredible teacher leaders, administrators, and curriculum specialists who have prepared a very productive session for you. And we'll conclude that portion at 11. So earlier this morning, Scott and I were reminiscing about this time last year and how we came together as one large WHPS family. We convened in the beautiful auditorium of Conard High School, and we greeted each other with smiles and handshakes and fist bumps and hugs, and we shared stories about our summer adventures. And so we realized that this doesn't compare to Jen Stanish and the band bringing the house down, but we're going to do our very best, and we're going to make the best of this day in this format. So I'm going to ask you to indulge us for a moment. I want you to think about your favorite relaxing destination, or maybe just your favorite, your peaceful space. Could be near, could be far, could be in your own backyard. So a moment to just think of that relaxing or peaceful space. So now I am going to ask you to take a deep breath in. Breathe in that peaceful space. And gently, slowly, gradually exhale into the universe. There. Thank you. Now I'm going to start this program again with a greeting. And that greeting is Kasaria Ingira. Kasarian Ingira means, and how are the children? It is a traditional greeting of the African Marseille community. It is how they greet each other, where we say, "Good morning, and how are you?" They say, "Good morning, and how are the children?" So I want you to imagine yourselves in that peaceful space and all of us in a circle. And imagine the children being in that circle. And I'll say again, Kasarian Ingira, how are the children? And so in this African community, they concern themselves with the future generation, with the children, because they firmly believe that nurturing the children and the well-being of the children, that is their path to the prosperity of their society. And so the English version of their traditional response to that question, and how are the children, is all of the children are well. Now, it doesn't mean that children don't struggle. Of course, they have productive struggle, but they are in the caring and compassionate hands of their community. So it just made me think about, imagine if that's how we greeted each other every day. And how are the children? All of the children are well, because that's our aim. That's our focus. But then I think about, well, what about the adults, right? What about the adults, Scott?
Right, so we're not in this work alone. We're here for the children. The children really are our future. I think all of us believe in that idea, or we wouldn't be educators. But we also need to remember that there are a lot of adults in this community, including ourselves, that we need to look out for. So we have one more Maasai phrase for all of us to start our day, which is supai. And that means, how are you? And we would like to reorient ourselves this morning, not just to the children that we all serve, but to one another and to ourselves. This work calls for us to be attendant to our own needs and to our own wellness, and to be sure that we are involved with self-care and the care of those that we work with. We're well aware that this is not a usual year. As Rosina said, we're entering into a unique circumstance where there's a lot of unknowns. We're entering with excitement, with some trepidation, and we need to make sure that we tend to those pieces. So social and emotional learning is a part of what we're going to talk about today. It is always there as a foundation piece to our work, but we don't want to forget that. We want to make sure that we check on one another and we are checking on ourselves as a part of our work.
So that is important. And so when I think of, the well-being of our children and our adults, our educators, our staff, and I think about checking in, what does that mean for our community?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean for 1 year? And so I'll ask my colleagues, and I'll ask you, Scott, what would we see? And what would be some indicators that all of the children are well?
I just think of my experiences in schools and in life, and laughing, smiling children are happy children. So I would hope for that this year, that we would be, in spite of all the challenges, we would see our children smiling and laughing. So I'll ask you the same question about the adults in our community. What would you feel, what would you see personally or for the other adults that we work with that would indicate that we're well?
Good question. I think similar to what we would see with students, laughing and smiling. Even if we can't see smiles under masks,
Mm-hmm.
we would see it in their eyes.
Right.
We would see it in body language. We would see it in cheerful, eager interaction with our students as well as families and our colleagues. I think that we would also hear a song in their voices.
Nice. So we want to also start our year off with appreciation. Mr. Moore, Tom said to all of you that he feels very fortunate. I think we all feel fortunate to work in a community like this one where we do put the resources into supporting our students, but also to one another and to the values that we all embrace. And we want to make sure that we really do put our money where our mouth is. And we started this slide says appreciate you. It means that we appreciate you, but also you should do what you can to appreciate yourself and give yourself the priority that you deserve. That you do what you can to care for yourself, and that means that you start by acknowledging your emotions. Many folks that I've talked to as the year begins are feeling that anxiety. That's okay to embrace, it's okay to acknowledge, and if we don't, we're missing out on something important, and to noticing where we are and orienting ourselves to the time. But we also need to give ourselves permission to be human. We have a really important responsibility to our community and to our students. We all take it very seriously. But we also need to understand that requires that we are humble and that we allow ourselves that space to be human in this moment. That we practice non-judgment. It's very easy. I know I found myself last spring when counseling my students online, challenges abundant in trying to get students to attend those meetings and working with families. I found that it was really easy to judge myself and to not really feel as competent as I'm used to. All the game rules of the game have changed. Be fair to yourself. This is a new environment that we're working in, and we want to make sure that we're working fairly in that environment. Care for your body. Take advantage of the resources that are around you. I would say unplug is an important piece of this. We can't have our eyes on screens every minute. There's too much really for us to go and focus that may create a sense of unrest if we're not careful to give ourselves some space. Socialize safely, treat yourself well, and don't forget to laugh, to Rosina's point. So to begin sort of segueing into really part of what we're here to talk about today, this is not work that we're entering into in a vacuum. We and our students are in this work together. Our community is here together. And we're entering into our classrooms and into our learning spaces with a society right now that is very uplifted, but also very filled with emotion. Our students and the staff and the families around us, we're all coming through the doors with all sorts of ideas about what's happening in the world. And we want to make sure that we attend to that. We're attuned to where our students are, and we're really embracing what's going on in a way that is going to guide our students through it. The scene that we have here that we're showing you is a scene from just June of this year, to tell you just how activated so much of our community is in a way that makes us proud, but also we have to be aware of how much emotion is associated with that.
And that's right here in our own backyard.
Yeah.
And sweeping across the nation. This is Naomi Osaka. She's a professional tennis player, and she takes a firm stand against racial injustice, as does Jaylen Brown, NBA player. You know, we have seen a groundswell of awareness and demand for social justice, and it has implications for our schools and for our educators. As Scott said, we have to be attuned and ready to prepare our students for the realities of systemic racism. And it is a big charge. It's a heavy responsibility, and it weighs heavy on the heart, the mind, and the soul. And that's why I think that we have to think about where we're coming into this work.
So as you evaluate where you are personally in entering into this work and the work of anti-racism, there is a tool that we use in district, and we'd like people to get familiar with. It may help you. Each of us enter into anti-racist work and the work of thinking about systemic racism differently, partly due to our identities, our experience. And this compass is one that has been developed by folks who provided a framework under Courageous Conversations. Some folks enter the work thinking through the intellectual lens. It just feels like that's the right place to enter work about anti-racism. Others, it's a belief system. It comes from what I believe about the world and what I think is true. Others, it's more emotional. And these, by the way, you may bounce back and forth. And for the others, still, it's in the body, it's in what we do. And so orient yourself to where you are and be sure to pay attention to some of that, because it's important as you begin to think about a rounded perspective on the work.
So think about that. Think about how you are entering this work, just for a moment. So we want everyone, all of our colleagues, to situate yourselves in this work. Find your individual responsibility around a shared and collective vision. That is our way. That's the only way. Collective movement. We also want to really focus and deepen our cultural competence work through an anti-racist lens. And our pathway to that is through social emotional learning and social justice education. That is our purpose, to become a more socially inclusive, just, equitable organization for all students.
So as with any important work, where it is not me as an individual, it is work that we are doing collectively, we need to establish norms for this work. This is work that is really fraught with all sorts of emotion. I think people want to make sure that they are respectful. And so we've established some norms, and we are going to work hard to maintain those norms as we do the work. But first and foremost, we want to make sure you stay engaged, that each of us in this work stays present. It's important that even if we don't agree with what's being said, that we recognize the type of work that we're doing, and we participate in a way that shows that we're actively listening, actively engaged in what is being said in the moment, and really thinking about it. It's okay to be uncomfortable, okay to be in a state of discomfort. There will be moments where each of us feels we're really unsettled by what it is we're thinking about, or what we may be feeling, or what we may be experiencing. That's okay. Real change comes with discomfort. We need to respect each other's learning journey as well. Everyone's in a different place. Each of us enter this work not just from a different orientation, but also with different experiences and different opportunities to have grown and to have thought about the work. It's important to respect that everyone's in a different place and help people in that journey, and hope that they will help you as well. And the last piece that we really are establishing as important norms is the element of non-closure. We need to accept that this is work that's never fully done. There is never really a point at which we can say we're finished with this. This is ongoing work that's important as a society, and we as an organization really need to know that this is a struggle. It is for continuous improvement that we work towards just a better next step.
Well said.
Thank you.
So I want to spend a moment, I want to speak just a little bit about culturally responsive teaching, CRT. And that is essentially a research-based approach to making meaningful connections between what students are learning in school and what they learn in their cultures, their language, and in their life experiences. And so this wheel reflects what West Hartford Public Schools has identified as 8 key effective teaching strategies that help students to develop habits of mind so that they are successful. And they're culturally responsive ways of teaching and being and practicing that support all students.
Also informing our work, there are national organizations like CASEL, and there are state frameworks that help us to think about our responsibilities to not just teach academics. Remember, we're teaching children first, and we happen to be teaching them academics, but we're also teaching them they're going to become citizens and our neighbors, and ideally they're going to become well-adjusted adults. And so we have a framework for helping our students, whatever their age, whatever their readiness, to become more able to manage themselves socially and emotionally. That includes working on self-awareness, self-management, social awareness and relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And again, as a reminder, in this work, we're not dealing with students who are blank slates. We ourselves, our families that we serve, we're not entering this work without being part of the current and the tide that is sweeping through our country. There's a lot for us to wrestle with, and we need to act as guides for our students as they think about all that's swirling around them. And we ask that you do this with empathy, that we've got young people who are coming from a variety of different circumstances in their homes, and it's really challenging for us to know what any of them may be feeling, but be attuned to what they may be feeling. Be actively involved in trying to think through and look at where they may be as you help them to navigate these tough times. So we would make some recommendations. I think that it's easy to be overwhelmed when we think about all that we're responsible to, and we as educators do carry a lot of a great burden, but there's a lot that we already do and we can do that will help young people. So one is to keep orderly and predictable classrooms. These serve as islands of safety for young people. They serve as places that are predictable and where the world makes sense. As long as we are steady in what we carry out in our classrooms and what we expect of students, they will gravitate to what we have set as the expectations. We too, as adults, we can stand as models for young people. Calm, fair, and reasonable educators help young people to ground themselves. We help to teach self-regulation by our actions. And so the kids are watching. You know, students are watching you, young people are watching you at any moment. and we can model for them what it means to be self-regulated, what it means to be calm, what it means to be reasonable.
Predictability. It makes me think about a saying that former Human Resources Director Tim Dunn, great guy, used to say, "No one likes to be struck by lightning on a sunny day, but unexpected events happen," right? And so we can model and teach our students just how to respond, how to be aware of self, how to regulate, right? And so we do that we can do that and teach them that and model that for them through a set of standards. And they're social emotional learning standards developed by CASEL. CASEL is the collaborative for academic and social emotional learning. And all of the things that Scott just talked about, that self-awareness piece and self-regulation and responsibilities, relationships, they link, and we use this bridge as a metaphor because they link to a set of standards for social justice education. And that is the way to becoming and practicing ways of being anti-racist. And so if I can unpack this here and making the correlation, self-awareness has a lot to do with identity. Identity being who I am. And then diversity. You talked about empathy, recognizing the world around us, who we are. And then this piece of justice. There's that moral responsibility within your community to just not be able to unsee or unhear or turn away from racial injustice, systemic racism, discrimination, and oppression, but to feel compelled to do something. And that's where that activism comes in, being an agent for change. And so those are two sets of standards and frameworks which we will ground this work to become more socially just, inclusive, and equitable school district. And ultimately, it's about relationships. And as we do this, we build relationships, we build community. Collective, that's our way. And so I just want to refresh on our framework. We haven't moved away from our cultural competence framework. We remain unwavered in building our cultural competence. 4 years ago, we kicked off our long-term commitment to build our cultural competence. And essentially, it's really developing our cultural consciousness. And that is just understanding who we are, what shapes us, understanding our biases, prejudices, understanding marginalization, and even privilege. But it's what you do with that understanding that's important, how you translate that into your practice, how we demonstrate culturally responsive teaching and practice. Ensuring that students see themselves and their narratives and their history in the context of teaching and learning. And that's just culturally respectful. And over time, just developing this awareness and empowerment to be agents of change. So that remains our framework, building our cultural competence. But we are also informed and guided by standards developed by the Connecticut State Department of Education. And cultural competence is one of those standards for professional learning, one of 8. And so we really want to use this as a tool to driving our professional growth.
So as with goals that exist and that are provided by the state for cultural competence, there are goals that the state has outlined, again, that stem from larger organizations like CASEL, which should guide our work in terms of social and emotional learning. And they're very much overlapping. The bridge metaphor is very apt. In the case of the SEL goals, they're to build staff capacity for cultural competence and support for a commitment to become anti-racist, and to reimagine education, reshape our schools and practices to be more responsive, equitable, socially just, as evidenced by student opportunities, engagement, and relationships and outcomes. And there are methods for doing so.
So you talked about experiencing discomfort.
Right.
And embracing or leaning into it. And so before we can ask you to do that, we feel that it is important to give our educators, our colleagues, and our students the tools and the skills to be able to do that, to feel empowered to move forward in these conversations that lead to change that we want to see.
Actually, these are the SEL goals. I'm sorry, those were more of the goals for cultural competence. But in the case of social and emotional learning, we're looking to, again, help people to become successful and balanced adults. Social and emotional learning is for all learners, and it's to help them to contribute. It does contribute to their academic and career success. It isn't really something which is separate and apart. It is important that our students be able to develop a better awareness of themselves as social beings and as emotional beings. And together we can help students understand and respect themselves and others to acquire effective interpersonal skills, understand safety and resilience skills, and develop into contributing members of society. It's the third C that doesn't get mentioned often, in terms of Common Core, career and college readiness. It's civic readiness or community readiness. We're talking about these are our neighbors, these are going to be the adults that are out in our communities. And so, again, to one of Rosina's and our hopefully larger points, we are building community. Our classrooms are the first place in which we have some sort of ability to establish a small community and to establish what the norms look like. There is nothing better to help young people to learn what it is that we are trying to teach than to live it. And so we are really trying to have each of our learning spaces be kind, inclusive, and safe classroom communities. That modeling is really important in driving social and emotional learning and cultural competence.
So I really like that heart in hand.
Yeah.
I do feel like, though, we've been talking kind of in theoretical terms.
Sure.
Can you talk to us or take us through some examples of what that might look like in a classroom?
Yeah, so again, I think that we're highly aware that there's a lot of information and there's a lot of expectations, but there's a lot that we already do that really we can build upon. And so here we provided, and we'll also be sending out some examples of some things that we already do that we really can just capture and take advantage of. Students need to be feeling safe first before they can learn. They need to feel secure both physically and emotionally. And so classroom routines, again, these are important to establish early and to reinforce the expectations often. Some of those norms are brand new to us. So I think about norms that we have established for as long as we've been educators, but there are new ones. Wearing masks is a good example. And so Rosina has an example of one of the ways in which we're trying to normalize that masks are how we help care for one another. And we talk kindness all the time. We live according to what that looks like in our schools. This is another act of kindness and another act of care, establishing that as a norm. I think we need to be careful in how we maintain those norms and those expectations. We're not looking to go and shame. Some students may forget. Some students may need reminders. And we need to make sure that we frame that in a positive light. Applauding effort. Really working on that piece, that whole idea of Carol Dweck, and working on an effort as being key. We have a whole series of student needs here that we know how to manage. Being valued and an inclusive member of a community, that speaks to us on multiple levels. Not just cultural competence, but also really to the ways in which we help young people to feel like they can take risks, that they're valued as human beings. Intentionally building relationships. Don't be afraid to put that forward as a goal at the beginning of the school year. Building relationships with your students, with one another, having them get to know one another, and building relationships with their families. We need to put our arms around one another and build that community. Actively inviting a range of perspectives, not just hoping for it, but actively pursuing it and making sure that we invite students into looking at whatever we're teaching through multiple lenses. Modeling self-regulation and anti-racism. Our students look to us in all ways and as role models, whether we want to or not, they're watching. And so I would say that one of the ways that we already use is think aloud strategies. and I'm engaging and looking at a piece of text and opening up my mind as to what I thought when I read that piece or when I saw that, piece of video, is allowing students into our experience as we grapple with these notions of what it means to be anti-racist. Let them see that we are human beings in the struggle with them. I think it's really something we know how to do. It's just capturing that and using it well. And then directly teaching some of these strategies and skills and concepts is vital. It can't be all experiential. It can't be all just part of how we build our classroom environment. We actually have to actively teach perspective taking. More challenging for some students than others, and certainly there are plenty of national models for what it means to be judgmental, and to the cancel culture piece has become all too prevalent. We need to teach students to be able to actively perspective take, how to confront ideas they don't agree with in ways that are respectful. That has to be taught and modeled. But we know how to do much of this. I guess what we would want you to remember is mine what you already know, build off what you already know.
Thank you for those very explicit examples. And, I just want to say to our colleagues, we are certainly not talking at you. We're all in this together. It's about community. Over the summer, we made a commitment. We released our commitment statement for equity and anti-racism to the public. Mm-hmm. And it is essentially our commitment to our students, our families, and to each other, right? To really dig a little deeper than we have. It essentially acknowledges our shortcomings, just very transparently. It also recognizes the work that we have done and doesn't intend to do that in ways to say, oh, we're so great, or we're complacent or status quo. But it does, to some degree, honor the work that all of you have been doing over the years, and also provides a context to the community of what we have done. Yet, we call out that we have not done enough. It's just not enough. And so we make a commitment to dig a little deeper and to just find ways to reach all students. And so this commitment, while this commitment is to all students, we really have to call attention to those students who have traditionally been marginalized, underserved, and underrepresented. And so this is essentially not just our commitment, it is our promise to all students and families. And so this is a video that was trending last week among our colleagues. It was trending across social media. And so I'd like for you, Scott, to set this up while I set this up for our colleagues who may not have seen it, and I'll cue it while you do that.
For those of you who either try not to watch social media or who don't maybe follow sports, the NBA players, right after the incidents in Wisconsin, opted to strike and not play their playoff games. And one of the coaches, Doc Rivers, in this video you're about to see, was responding to what that was like as a coach initially. But as you'll see, if you haven't seen it, even if you have seen it, each time I watch it I have a reaction, but if you haven't seen it, I'd like you just to simply pay attention to his response to the events and as a human being.
Okay, do we have sound? Is there sound?
Can you bring up the volume in your computer?
It's all the way up.
What about on the screen, on the YouTube video itself?
It's all the way up.
It is.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here so we can get it cued.
Okay, let's try it.
All right, here we go. Thank you for that setup, Scott. Let's try it again.
Sure.
So
I can describe it, or
we can certainly describe it.
It doesn't do it justice, unfortunately.
It really, I can't begin to recapitulate the message and the raw emotion of this notable figure, this human soul, this African-American man. And, the quote that that's gonna live throughout history, we keep loving this country, and this country doesn't love us back.
I think when I first saw this video, I was just struck as a father, as a person who's done some coaching, as a citizen, as a white male, on so many levels. It was clear that he intended to stay in his professional lane and was unable to do that. It moved him to the place where his humanity was challenged, and he spoke about this as a person growing up in America, person of color growing up in America, as a father in America. I think when you get a chance to see this, it would be important for you to hear his words and the emotion with which he spoke those words. It's unfortunate we can't see it, but...
yeah, it remains linked here,
Yeah.
and it's probably more powerful on your own screen,
Yeah.
right? So, do you want to?
Yeah, we're gonna try to connect it directly.
Okay, we'll come back to that. So where are you right now?
Where am I? Well, thinking about this particular moment in history, I think my first response was an emotional response. First was feeling deeply moved, emotionally upset, and then angry, and then moved into that place where I think many of us have gotten to, and maybe we as educators need to get to, which is, so what do I do? I think that's where I end up, is I'm moved emotionally. My sense of what is morally correct is engaged. Now I want to be able to do something. And so I think that's where I am right now, is I'm hungry to do good work.
Okay. And this work, I want to provide a context to this work that we've done. It didn't start when Colin Kaepernick took a knee.
No.
And it didn't start when that officer took a knee to the neck of George Floyd, or when COVID ripped that Band-Aid off to expose a double pandemic.
Right.
But it was the summer work and the summer reflection that prompted and compelled a number of our colleagues and educators to really reach out to us and say, we're ready, we want to do more, we want to dig deeper. And so I do want to give a nod to many of our colleagues and our administrators and curriculum specialists and parents who have stepped up. They've answered the call for help and collaboration around this shared and collective vision to build community and to just do better by our children. And so during the summer, we had educators and leaders come in and do some curriculum writing to design lessons around social emotional learning and social justice, to begin to have those conversations toward anti-racist ways of being and knowing and acting. And what greatness came out of this was this family school partnership that we see as ongoing, will leverage us in our work, will support us in our work. But I also saw relationships, connections made, and that start of rebuilding community again. And that's how we start that healing process. And so we have tons of resources, and we're trying to identify a way to make it accessible. We're putting together a compendium of resources that will support all of us in real time or in demand. And so these are just a few that are live and linked in this PowerPoint. But Scott, you might want to say more about other resources.
So in addition to these resources, some of what we tried to just briefly overview today in terms of how one might actively do this work in the classroom will be resources that we're going to be building out over time. We hope to make this a set of resources where you can lift them off and make them your own and adapt them to your own classroom or to your own educational setting. There are also human resources in the district. There are a number of us who really have spent a great deal of time trying to wrestle with these ideas and what to do, including your colleagues. There are many of you in your buildings who really have taken this work on. There were book reads that were going on throughout the summer. And so we hope to identify some folks who can serve as resources, thought partners, and colleagues who are available to you when you want to, wrestle together. So we will be making some of those folks available and some of those resources available to you over time.
So I want to read this quote. This is a quote, the sister of Jacob Blake, Letitra Woodman. So many people have reached out to me saying they're sorry that this has been happening to my family. Well, don't be sorry, because this has been happening to my family for a long time, longer than I can account for. It happened to Emmett Till. Emmett Till is my family. It happened to Philandro. It happened to Michael Brown and Sandra Bland. I don't want your pity. I want change, she says. And so when I think about people who say, my friends and my colleagues who say, well, what do you want me to do? Like, how should I behave? What should I do? Tell me practically, what should I do? And it goes back to just a little bit of that empathy. Having that empathy, that way you can better understand. Instead of pity, not sympathy, but also developing your equity muscle so that you have the courage to act as an agent of change, to be an ally, or maybe even better, deeper, a co-conspirator. And so it really is about, to quote a good legend, John Lewis, it's about getting into good trouble, necessary trouble. And he says to help redeem the soul of America. And again, that takes courage. It takes care, too. And so I'd like to invite another colleague in this work who I consider an ally and a co-conspirator, and she's willing to get into good trouble, necessary trouble. Please welcome to the studio for this portion to close us out, Jocelyn Tamburello Noble. She is a world language supervisor, and she has been a very strong and passionate leader in this work. Welcome. Good morning, Jocelyn.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody, and welcome to this morning's session. I'm Jocelyn Tamburello Noble. I'm a world language supervisor and a co-conspirator in the work for anti-racism for West Hartford Public Schools. I am so excited about this work as a graduate of West Hartford Public Schools and with somebody with 2 children in the district. I cannot tell you what this work means to me personally. This is an investment in myself to always work towards being anti-racist, and this is an investment in my colleagues and my friends to always call for social justice. We know that our work is never fully done, and we know that every day it's about learning more and learning the history that perhaps was not told to us. But it is about our personal investment to know more. It is to ask questions and to be empathetic for all of the people that do not have the same rights, do not have the same privileges, linguistic, racial, or otherwise. So please allow me to welcome you this morning and be excited about the work and know that we are looking for more co-conspirators in this work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. And it's just been so wonderful to have you here. Do you want to take us out to the break? Tell us what's going to happen next when we conclude this session in about 5 minutes and we head out to a break and our breakout sessions.
Of course. So you're going to, as you head to breakout sessions, you're going to hear a little bit more about the work that we've done and the process that we went through this summer as a curriculum team to develop the best lessons that we can in terms of being able to process the anti-racism SEL work. So you'll see some of the lessons and you will participate as a student and you will participate and share your own thoughts, feelings, and ideas today. I'm asking for you to be open, and I'm asking for you to ask and learn together as a community. As we work towards anti-racism, we know that every day is a process, and we ask good questions and get into good trouble together. So good luck this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again, Jocelyn. And so here's what the rest of the morning looks like. We will take a 10-minute break. And you have the links. They've been sent to you. They've been emailed to you, again, just an hour ago. But there's also a link that we've added, and that's for an information help desk. And so if you click on this link, I will appear or Scott will appear. And this can be used if you get lost or confused, don't know where you should be during your breakout session. And we've prepared join links for you for both high schools. And so we look forward to that engaging and interactive experience and dialogue with each other. As we close out, Scott, do you have any final words?
I would ask you again to remember why we're here. So Rosina asked me at the beginning of this conversation to think about my hopes for the year. My hopes would be that you are fully engaged and remind yourself of why you're in education. I see this as social justice work, as equity work, and I always have. I think many of us who enter into education really want to see social justice in our society, in all that we do, that we are trying to help young people to make this a better world. So I wish you luck. It's important work. I don't think any of us would be here if we didn't think so. So really enjoy, but good luck in trying to achieve that change.
Thank you for that. And so I will close with Kasarian Ingira. Thank you, colleagues, for all that you do for our children and our families. I'm very honored to be a partner in this work with you. Best wishes to you for a safe, positive, and healthy 2020-2021 school year. We'll see you in your breakout.